Good morrow, Ashers! We finally, after asking for weeks, if not months, of gameplay footage of the hybrid combat system, the tab target plus action combat, how it will play out, and we finally got some footage in yesterday's development update. I'm going to run into a quick bit of analysis and explanation of what we currently know. Let's jump straight into it then, shall we? Steven has finally decided to show us what the tab target and action hybrid combat system is expected to play like. I have just, as you can see on screen, pretty much made this video on the fly, thinking that I was going to post some other video, but decided this was a little bit more exciting. Needless to say, take a look. At the end of the day, we're looking at a literal left click to attack ability. This actually works based on your weapon type. So that means left clicking on a sword will give you a different result to left clicking on, let's say, a staff or a polearm might be. There's an actual frontal attack cone based on the type of weapon you are using, and that translates into your parentheses auto attack. In this video, we can actually hear Steven left clicking to perform basic auto attack abilities. I call them auto attacks, but they're technically an ability. We can expect different sizes of attacks based on the type of weapon. So a polearm will have a larger cleave radius, but it's very clear in this video that you can already see the actual auto attack of the sword hitting a large amount of enemies around him. He mentions being able to swap between a reticled action combat mode using the Z key to a tab targeting mode as you play live. I'm not entirely happy with the swapping thereof, but there is a very important distinction here. You can actually use a tab targeted ability, as you can see on screen right now, where he's throwing a javelin, and I think it's called the javelin pull, towards him, even though his reticle is not on his target. So in other words, even though you're in the action combat mode, that doesn't actually change the way your tab targeted abilities function. They will still be able to use them, or you'll still be able to pull a mob, even if they're not directly targeted by your reticle, assuming they are considered a tab targeted skill. Now, if you're not in tab targeted mode, I seem to be able to tell that he is still able to attack during that time with the left click. However, it'll always end up facing your opponent. So I can assume that by using a straight auto attack ability while in the action combat mode, you can more finely control the actual cone of your attack to hit specific enemies rather than just a specific direction to face your targeted opponent. This means that what tab targeting does is allow you a little bit of ease of use, while action combat will provide you a little bit more control. Just because a skill is considered an action combat skill does not mean that it is impossible to have it as a tab target. The actual skill points you spend in skills might be able to unlock a tab targeted improvement, so to speak, for your abilities. So let's use the harp or the pull as an example. At the early stages, it might be able to only pull on your reticle, but as you spend skill points on it, it becomes a tab targeted skill, so you can more easily use it into directions that you normally wouldn't with your camera facing a specific direction. That isn't specific to that skill, this is just an example. In this video and current stage of development, we can clearly see there is a global cooldown on his abilities. So despite the actual abilities not being used, the standard 1 second, or what appears to be 1 second, abilities are all going on cooldown as a global wait time. This is for balance reasons, as well as I assume to make animations a little bit more smooth. So there's a lot behind this. Whether this goes through to final product is obviously up in the air. In some ways, I actually like the fact that this happens. It feels a little bit more natural. Guild Wars 2 doesn't do this, but Guild Wars 2's animations and combat can be very overwhelming and quick, so it is up for debate whether it's better in this case, but we'll see. The video also contains dodges, So they appear to have a cooldown. Now, most games use, or most action games use, a endurance system which regenerates over time. These also feel a little bit clunky in some ways, and I'm not a big fan of it. But instead, having a fixed amount of dodges every few seconds might add a little bit of depth to the combat to me. Yes, it is a little bit stricter, but in the same sense, it is easier to balance, and you can add depth by getting gear or potions or something that increases the regeneration rate or decreases the cooldown that this dodge might have. On the wiki, it actually mentions that the dodge are a complete invincibility frames during the dodge animation, which means we'll be able to avoid both action-orientated combat skills as well as tab-targeted combat skills, which is very, very important. You don't want to be able to not dodge something because you couldn't tell whether the person is using it in action or tab targeted mode. The wiki does also mention that only specific classes, most notably the fighter and the rogue, so those are the kind of agile classes, will actually have a dodge available to them as an activated dodge. I'm not sure that's what's going to be end up in the final game. I hope not. I believe that every class should have access to dodges at varying rates or varying frames of effectiveness. So it's a little bit tough to actually go and make a recommendation because that's heavy on the balance side of things. You don't want mages being able to blow people up simply because they are able to dodge every now and again. But maybe one dodge every 2 minutes is more than fine, so that at least have the option in solo play to function from a gameplay perspective without needing someone to face tank for them. That's about it for the new information around combat, but I just want to quickly talk about animations and cast times. There are a lot of combat footage right now where the actual people or players are moving around a lot during the combat. This means that the combat will be incredibly interactive and smooth, being able to actively avoid AoEs or abilities thrown on the ground is a very fun component that you get in very few games, at least at a micro level as your movement progresses. But what's most concerning, or at least kind of concerning, is that the actual abilities sometimes lock you up for too long. There is this one ability, and I'll put it on screen for you right now, where the mage actually jumps up into the air, does a twirly spin, and throws a fireball at someone. But it looks like a relatively unimpactful and spammable skill. This should not be such an extreme animation and cast time. The animation looked great, don't get me wrong, I adore it, but at the same time, we don't want to spend too much time being locked in a position, first of all, unless it is an extremely impactful ability, and we don't want to see constant visual spam on our screens, or at least I don't. I should probably not speak for the community, but at the end of the day, less visual spam means more skill, more information that is important coming to your actual eyeballs and making it actually playable and enjoyable at the same time. Nobody wants to be killed and not know what the heck killed them after playing 1,000 hours in the game. At the same time, the mobility as well as the action combat and the fact that you can auto-attack, in parentheses, with an actual weapon while moving is super exciting to me, because this means that as a polearm user, you can actually apply the idea where you as a polearm user have more reach than the sword user in your actual field of vision. This is incredibly thematic, both historically and gameplay fun perspective, that it really adds so much depth to the system without actually making it complicated in any way. There is no additional coding, if I can put it like that, beyond the fact that your actual attack has a maximum range. So just making that possible already adds so much depth that I can't help but to be excited and ridiculously overhyped for this game. It is clear to me that they can and most definitely will pull off this combat system by just showing us this one video and the slight bit of information we got. Needless to say, thanks for watching and listening, guys. I'll probably be dropping the news update tomorrow, just so we can get you guys can get all the information from the latest development update in a nice digestible format. May Ashes be amazing. Cheers, cheers.